política. Podemos saludar ya a Alessandro Marrone, es Head of Defense Program International Affairs Institute, jefe del programa de defensa del Instituto de Asuntos Internacionales. Alessandro, thank you so much for having us a few minutes. Good afternoon from Spain.
Good afternoon from Rome.
Alessandro, we continue to monitor the possible price cap on Russian oil. The European Union is discussing a price cap between $65–70 per barrel. The range is well above Russia's cost of production and higher than some countries had been pushing for. We are wondering if does it make sense, because Russian oil currently trades at around $65 per barrel, so it wouldn't do much harm to Russia, isn't it?
It makes sense. European Union and G7 should have done it before. Italy already asked back in June to do so, and it would have saved money for European industries and consumers. It's a compromise. It's aimed to reduce the revenues for Russia, but not to create a shortage of fuel for Europe and North America. And it's also meant to stop the speculation, which may suddenly rise the price well beyond this level in the next month. So I think it makes sense, because there is a war in Europe. European Union countries per se are not at war, but they are suffering the cost of the war, and they are right in trying to impose cost on Russia to force Russia to negotiate a peace.
And Alessandro, how could Russia respond to this price cap?
Well, there is not much that Russia could do. It already cut some of its supplies. The Nord Stream pipeline is not working anymore, and Russia has a need as well to export its oil. And about 75–80%, more than 80% of Russian oil is shipped, not go through pipelines, and it cannot divert supplies to China as soon as it would wish, because it requires build up of new pipelines, and require also Asia to absorb what has been the major market for Russia, that has been Europe. So I think that this sanction could do something for Russia, could hit Russia, and Russia could not do that much against it.
So it could hit Russia in an economic way, do you mean?
In an economic way, but it's important because, for example, the other sanctions on technology, on trade, did hit the Russian ability to produce, maintain or repair the weapons which have been used in Ukraine. So it has really helped on the ground Ukraine. And if you extend the sanctions from products and technology also to financial revenues, it creates difficulties for Russia. Also because, honestly, Russia planned to invade the wall of Ukraine in a few weeks. It didn't plan for a 10 months long war, and indeed the war is not going as Putin wished. So now Russia is kind of a crossroad. It can continue the war, but without much gains on the ground, or it can recognize that the cost of continuing the war are higher than the benefit of continuing the war. And in that balance, adding an economic cost, it can change the calculus of part of the establishment, the economic and institutional establishment in Moscow.
And Alessandro, meanwhile, today the European Parliament designated Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. The move is largely symbolic, as the European Union doesn't have a legal framework in place to back it up. But what could it mean?
Pardon for the cough. It's a symbolic gesture, it's a political gesture to demonstrate once more that the European Union stands with Ukraine, and that to bring to the public opinion, to the world stage, that Russia has committed war crimes in these 10 months, a number of war crimes, and the fact that Russia is deliberately targeting Ukrainian energy grids to leave people in the cold in the winter, it's per se something really beyond the humanitarian law. Now, it will not have a practical effect because there is no legal framework to enforce it, and it would not, in a sense, preclude the West to have peace talks with Russia and Ukraine when the time will be ripe, when Moscow will be able to sit at the negotiation table in good faith. And it's part of, let's say, a moral and ethical standpoint on Ukraine that finds its expression in the European Parliament more than in the European government, because the European governments are more directly concerned of national economies and of a number of factors to consider in the equation, while the European Parliament usually is the institution in Brussels more closer to a long-term value-based view of European Union and its foreign policy.
And in Ukraine, winter is coming. It will be a tough winter for its citizens, as its energy infrastructures have suffered a war impact. Do you see the peace negotiations could start soon?
Do you see what?
Peace negotiations could start soon.
It depends on the balance of power in the ground, because Ukraine has been liberating a large part of the territories occupied by Russia, first in the east around Kharkiv and the Liman, and now in the south with the liberation of Kherson in recent weeks. But Ukraine it's suffering the attacks done by Russian missiles and drones on the electricity grids and the power grids and all the energy infrastructure. So much will depend by the ability of Ukraine to protect its energy infrastructure with air defense, with the air defense system able to shut down Russian drones and missiles before they hit the civilian targets, and it will depend on the ability of the country as a whole to its resilience, its ability to repair the energy grids hit, and also to live and to survive the winter with a limited amount of energy produced with a recurrent blackout over the days and weeks. So it's a question mark. So far, Ukraine has demonstrated much more willing to resist the invasion than Russia expected, and also much more than the West expected. So it can survive the winter. If Ukraine survives the winter, Russia will be in a very difficult position, because every month Russia continues to suffer casualties, to destroy equipment, and it's not making ground, it's not gaining ground anymore. So it can either hold or retreat, but Russia, from a military standpoint, cannot advance anymore towards Ukraine. So it will be up to Russian leadership month after month to decide if it's worth it to pay the price for a war that they're not going to win.
Thank you so much, Alessandro. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Have a good afternoon. Hasta luego.